Now, much of the coverage on the Iran-US tensions has focused on strategy and military posturing. But what about the human cost and what international law actually demands of both sides? Well, joining us now is Abbas Faiz, a human rights lecturer at the University of Essex and a former senior researcher at Amnesty International. Sir, thank you so much for joining us today. From an international human rights law perspective, what obligations do the United States and Iran have towards civilian populations if this standoff escalates further?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this program. There are a host of international obligations that all the countries of the world have towards the protection of civilians in situations of armed conflict. And these regulations, these laws, these kind of provisions are in the UN Charter, for example, in the international human rights law, and also in international humanitarian law. And by international humanitarian law, because it is slightly different from international human rights law, international humanitarian law really relates to the Geneva Conventions, which are also named as the rules governing situations of armed conflict. So these, the protection of civilians, protection of also civilian infrastructure is paramount in all of these regulations and legally binding obligations.
And so the detentions of foreign nationals and dual citizens have been a recurring feature of the Iran-US tensions. How does international law address this practice, and what protections, if any, actually exist for those detained?
Well, international human rights law states that people must not be arbitrarily detained, and these people are actually detained arbitrarily because there is no provable, or at least in a situation that can be, impartially investigated, there is no provable allegations against them. So they have been detained arbitrarily, unlawfully. And when I'm talking about unlawful, it doesn't mean that, the law that exists in the Islamic Republic of Iran. It is the law that exists in internationally binding instruments. So they are unlawful. So they amount to really hostage taking. And they're used for bargaining chips with the government of the state, whereby they have dual nationality. So the government of Iran, the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, considers them, because they don't recognize a second nationality. So these people are deprived of consular representation by their own government. So that is one thing that is against them. The other thing is that the elections are not impartial. The prosecution is not impartial, and the trial is not impartial. So they are all in the hands of the security agencies, and the security agencies are actually taking their clues and their orders from one person in the Islamic Republic. In the past, that person was Ali Khamenei. Now it is somebody who hasn't been seen or hasn't been heard, but his name comes up from time to time to have issued the statements. So technically, we are talking about a situation where these people, dual nationals, and there are quite a lot of them. And because it is not possible to actually go to the detention centers of the Islamic Republic, it is impossible to find the exact number of those people. And the numbers just surface when some kind of a deal has been struck for their release. But there are many of them who are still in detention, and they need international support, but unfortunately, they are not receiving that.
And so if military action affects civilian infrastructure in Iran or the Gulf states, what legal frameworks govern accountability for resulting civilian harm?
Yes, that is a very interesting question, because legal accountability is there. Legally binding kind of situations, measures, and mechanisms exist there. What we are, lacking is enforcement. But I will talk about the mechanisms that exist. For example, if a civilian structure is targeted in a country for the sake of argument, say Kuwait or any other country, or like kind of Jordan. So there are 3 or 4 different actually options open to investigate the attack against civilians. And when the attack against the civilian infrastructure happens, it's got to be, a number of provisions have got to be taken into account. One is provision of really recognition that this infrastructure, this building, this place where, which has been attacked, is not a military operating or kind of building. So that has to be clearly identified. If it is a military operating building, then that becomes a legitimate target. But if it is not, it cannot be. Then the issue of proportionality. Even if it is for example, a school which has been used by a military force to hide their place, or to somehow use the children in that school as a military shield, as a human shield. If it is, then of course the attacking force have got to investigate and be apprised of the proportion of civilians that are likely to be harmed by an attack. And if the proportion is significantly high, and in most places it could be significantly high, they must not actually do that. Now, once an attack takes place, there are a number of remedies. The attack can be investigated. For example, the attacking force can be investigated by a court in the country in which an infrastructure had been attacked, by a special tribunal, international tribunal. They can be investigated and they can be prosecuted, or by the, some very important international courts, like the International Court of Justice, between the International Criminal Court, if whereby anyone can actually take a case to them. So the question is that these mechanisms actually exist, but the difficulty is enforcing them. Once the kind of crime has been proven and a sentence has been imposed, who is going to actually impose that sentence, enforce that sentence? That is one of the problems that we have.
So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.